Welcome back to Unfiltered and Unbound. I'm Kate Baxter, and today's coffee break is a little different because I want to share the thinking behind the first Unfiltered and Unbound campaign and the question at the centre of it. So one of the things I enjoy most about this podcast is the range of women I get to speak to because their lives and experiences are so different. But even across those very different stories, one theme keeps coming up. Midlife is often a time of reinvention. For many women, particularly as they move through their 50s and 60s, life has not unfolded in the way they once expected. There may have been an unexpected divorce, redundancy, illness, caring responsibilities, children leaving home, or simply the realization that the life they built no longer fits who they are. Some suddenly find themselves on their own and having to begin again, often at a point when they assumed life would feel more settled. And what I've noticed in some of these conversations is how many women initially doubt whether they can manage. They may have spent years believing, consciously or otherwise, that security came through a partner, that major decisions belonged to someone else, or that starting again alone was something to fear. Those beliefs do not appear from nowhere. Many of us were socialised from childhood to be accommodating, to prioritise relationships, to avoid risk, and to see independence in women as difficult, selfish, or somehow less desirable. Of course, that is not every woman's experience, and not every rule was learned in childhood. But it has made me think more deeply about the beliefs women inherit and how those beliefs shape the choices we make and what happens when life forces us to question them. Let's first begin with the story. When I was about 18 or 19, I was in a nightclub with a group of friends, and a man asked me if he could buy me a drink. I said no, and he asked me why. And I very clearly remember replying, "I don't owe you an explanation." Now, I don't remember much of what happened after that. Clearly nothing particularly dramatic because nothing else about that evening stands out. What I do remember was that exchange. The offer, my no, the demand for a reason, and my absolute certainty that I did not have to provide one. Now, every now and again that memory crops up, usually when I'm having a conversation with people about boundaries and saying no and not over-explaining things. I now look back on that event and, like so many things in my 50s, I see it in a different light. And now I think I know why. The issue was never really the drink. It was the expectation that as a young woman, I needed to justify my use of the word no. That somehow I should, soften it, justify it, or reassure him to make sure he did not feel uncomfortable. Now, I think this might be one of those things I need to thank my mother for, because children in that era, or in the era I was raised in, at least this happened to me, I do recall as a child that whenever my mother said no to me and I asked her why, her response was always, "Because I said so." Now, I always felt hard done by with that response, and I'm sure some child psychologist will say we need to give kids a reason. But you know what? Looking back at that now, my mother was right. She did not need to give a reason or to justify it. No means no. And I think many women have been taught some version of that rule. We make a decision, but we should make it pleasantly. We set a boundary, but we should explain why. We can decline, but we should make sure the other person still feels okay about it. And when we don't, we risk being described as rude, difficult, cold, selfish, or unreasonable. Now, I did not have the language for any of that when I was 18 or 19. I just knew that no was my answer and that the decision belonged to me. Now, that story has been on my mind while I've been developing the next chapter of Unfiltered and Unbound, because so many of the rules that shape women's lives are not formally written down. Some are spoken aloud, others are absorbed so gradually that they begin to feel like the truth. And they could be a number of things. Do not talk about money. Do not be too ambitious. Do not make people feel uncomfortable. Do not ask for more. Do not take up space. Do not start again at your age. Do not change your mind. Do not be difficult. Now, many of these rules are disguised as good manners, professionalism, common sense, being a good partner, being a good mother, being grateful, or simply just knowing how the world works. But they can affect much more than whether we speak up in a particular moment. They can shape the job we apply for, the salary we negotiate, the relationship we stay in, the medical questions we ask or don't ask, the financial decisions we avoid, the businesses we do not start, and the future we decide is no longer available to us. So the first Unfiltered and Unbound campaign begins with one question. What rule were you taught that no longer serves you? Now, this is not about rejecting every tradition, expectation, or piece of advice we have ever received. It's about recognizing the rules that have shaped us, often without our conscious agreement, and deciding whether they still have a place in our lives. The rule may come from family, work, school, relationships, media, religion, community, or simply from watching what happened to women who did not conform. It may be a rule you've already broken. It may be one you are only beginning to question. It may be something that once protected you but now limits you. And participation does not require a dramatic life overhaul. It might begin with one conversation, one boundary, one financial decision, one new question, or one refusal to keep explaining a choice that belongs to you. So if I were to answer the campaign question for myself, one of the rules I no longer accept is this, that a good woman should keep everyone else comfortable. I think many of us were taught directly or indirectly to smooth things over, soften our opinions, avoid disappointment, and make our choices easier for other people to accept. I no longer believe that discomfort automatically means I've done something wrong, or that being kind requires me to make myself smaller, quieter, or more agreeable. Sometimes another person may not like my decision, and that does not mean the decision was unkind, unfair, or mistaken. What I believe now is that I can be thoughtful and considerate without abandoning my own judgment. And I can allow other people to have their feelings without taking responsibility for managing all of them. Now I want to hear from you. What rule were you taught that no longer serves you? What was the rule? How did it affect your choices? When did you begin to question it? And what do you believe now? You can share a single sentence or a longer story. You can comment publicly or use the email address in the show notes. Please share only what feels safe and appropriate for you. And with permission, some of these stories may become part of future Unfiltered and Unbound conversations, because the purpose of this campaign is not simply to reject old rules, it is to make visible the patterns that have limited women and create better alternatives together. I said no in a nightclub decades ago, and I did not explain it. At the time, it was simply an answer. Now I can see that it was also a small act of agency. So I will leave you with the question at the centre of this campaign: the rules that no longer serve us. What rule were you taught that no longer serves you?